What is allelopathy?
Allelopathy is the release of chemicals by certain plants that inhibit the growth and development of competing plants. The chemicals are usually terpenes or phenols and may be found in roots, stems, leaves, fruits, or seeds. An example of this relationship among plants is the black walnut tree, Juglans nigra. A chemical compound in the leaves and green stems of the black walnut tree is leached by rainfall into the soil. The chemical compound from the black walnut tree leached by rainfall into the soil is hydrolyzed and oxidized into another compound called juglone. Juglone has been shown to be very toxic to many plants as well as an inhibitor of seed germination. Tomatoes and alfalfa wilt when grown near black walnuts, and their seedlings die if their roots contact walnut roots. Similarly, white pine, Pinus strobus, and black locust, Robinia pseudoacacia, are often killed by black walnuts growing in their vicinity. Another example of allelopathy is the production of camphor and cineole by the shrub sage, Salvia leucophylla, and Artemisia, Artemisia californica. Areas of 10 to 12 feet, 3.0 to 3.6 m, in diameter around these plants are void of other plants.
Can pearls be genetically engineered?
Pearls can now be genetically engineered because scientists have isolated and characterized the protein nacrane, which is the primary component of pearls. When nacrane is combined with calcium ions, it forms an organic matrix similar to that found in an oyster's inner shell.
What is bioremediation?
Bioremediation is the use of organisms to remove toxic materials from the environment. Bacteria, protists, and fungi are good at degrading complex molecules into waste products that are generally safe and recyclable. Sewage treatment plants perform bioremediation in a limited way. An example of bioremediation is the massive cleanup in Alaska following the Exxon Valdez oil spill in 1989. The superficial layer of oil was removed by suction and filtration, but the oil-soaked beach was cleaned by bacteria that could use oil as an energy source.
What was the first virus to be isolated in a laboratory?
In 1935, Wendell Stanley, 1904 to 1971, of the Rockefeller Institute, known today as Rockefeller University, prepared an extract of the tobacco mosaic virus and purified it. The purified virus precipitated in the form of crystals. During this investigation, Stanley was able to demonstrate that viruses can be regarded as chemical. matter rather than as living organisms. The purified crystals retain the ability to infect healthy tobacco plants, thus characterizing them as viruses, not merely chemical compounds derived from a virus. Subsequent studies showed that the tobacco mosaic virus consisted of a protein and a nucleic acid. Further studies showed that this virus consisted of RNA, ribonucleic acid, surrounded by a protein coat. Stanley was awarded the Nobel Prize in Chemistry in 1946 for his discovery.
Can animals suffer from psychological disorders?
Although animals are used as models for research into disorders like anxiety, depression, and even schizophrenia, these conditions have been induced in them either through surgery or behavioral treatments. Scientists are currently developing strains of mice and rats that are genetically predisposed toward these diseases in hopes of gaining a better understanding of symptoms and more effective treatments. As for animals in the wild, the answer lies in the still unresolved issues of whether animals experience emotions and whether they have consciousness or the awareness of self.
How did the increased level of radioactive dust, cesium-137, in lichens affect the food chain following the Chernobyl nuclear power station disaster?
Lichens are a primary source of food for reindeer. Reindeer is commonly consumed by humans that live in regions of tundra. When the accumulated level of radioactive dust present in lichens became so high in the reindeer that fed off of them, the reindeer meat became unsuitable for human consumption. Hundreds of tons of reindeer carcasses were disposed of as toxic waste.
How does meiosis relate to Mendel's laws?
Mendel's law of segregation directly refers to meiosis. He had suggested that gametes contain characters that control specific traits, and these characters separate when gametes form. Gametes are formed by meiosis, in which the chromosome number is reduced by 1/2, from diploid to haploid.
Do animals cry?
Crying in response to emotional distress has been documented only in humans. However, many animals, particularly the young, demonstrate their response to distress by changes in vocalizations and movement. While tear production, the lacrimal response, is found in a number of animals, but not crocodiles. The tears are used to maintain the cleanliness and moisture of the eyes and not to display emotion.
Are all cell membranes alike?
Although all cell membranes have the same general structure, the membrane composition is different for each species, depending on their function. Membranes vary in the amount of protein they contain or the type of membrane receptors they contain. For example, plants that can survive frigid temperatures, such as winter wheat, are able to increase their concentration of unsaturated phospholipids during the winter to prevent membrane solidification. Another example is muscle cells, which have plasma membrane receptors for the neurotransmitter acetylcholine that tells them when to contract.
Who was the first person to receive gene therapy?
In 1990, Ashanti da Silva, a 4-year-old with severe combined immune deficiency, SCID, had her white blood cells removed and replaced with a normal copy of the defective gene. SCID is a life-threatening disease in which patients lack a healthy immune system due to the inability to produce an important enzyme, adenosine deaminase. Although the treatment proved safe and her immune system was strengthened, the treated cells failed to give rise to additional healthy cells. In order to maintain normal levels of adenosine deaminase, Da Silva must take doses of the enzyme itself.
Who is considered the father of lichenology?
Eric Acharius, 1757–1819, is considered the father of lichenology. He was the founder of modern lichen taxonomy, having described and arranged lichens into 40 distinct genera. His 4 major works of research: Lichenographum Swaix Prodromus, 1798. Methodus Lichenum, 1803, Lichenographia Universalis, 1810. And Synopsis Methodica Lichenum, 1814, formed the foundations of modern lichenology.
How do animals know which direction to travel?
The ability to navigate from one place to another is found among a diverse group of species. While it is well known that birds can navigate over long distances, many people are unaware that bats, salmon, locusts, and frogs are also capable of this behavior. Animals use a variety of cues to find their way, including the position of the sun, moon, and stars. Topographic features of the landscape, meteorological cues, e.g., prevailing winds and magnetic fields are also used by certain animals.
How sensitive is the hearing of birds?
In most species of birds, the most important sense after sight is hearing. Birds' ears are close to their bodies and covered with feathers. However, the feathers covering the ears do not have barbules, which would obstruct sound. Ears of different heights allow the bird to locate of sound. Nocturnal raptors such as the great horned owl have a very well developed sense of hearing in order to be able to capture their prey in total darkness.
When did the last passenger pigeon die?
At one time, 200 years ago, the passenger pigeon, Ectopus migratorius, was the world's most abundant bird. Although the species was found only in eastern North America, it had a population of between 3 and 5 billion birds, 25% of the North American land bird population. Overhunting caused a chain of events that reduced their numbers below minimum threshold for viability. In the 1890s, several states passed laws to protect the pigeon, but it was too late. The last known wild bird was shot in 1900. The last passenger pigeon, named Martha, died on September 1, 1914, in the Cincinnati Zoo.
Who coined the term biology?
Jean-Baptiste de Lamarck, 1744–1829, is credited with coining the term biology, from the Greek terms bios, meaning life, and logi, meaning study of, in 1802 to describe the science of life. He was also the first to publish a version of an evolutionary tree, which describes the ancestral relationships among species.
Where are fungi found?
Fungi grow best in dark, moist habitats, but they can be found wherever organic material is available. Moisture is necessary for their growth, and they can obtain water from the atmosphere as well as from the medium upon which they live. When the environment becomes very dry, fungi survive by going into a resting stage or by producing spores that are resistant to drying. The optimum pH for most species is 5.6, but some fungi can tolerate and grow in pH levels ranging from 2 to 9. Certain fungi can grow in concentrated salt solutions or sugar solutions such as jelly or jam, which cannot sustain bacterial growth. Fungi also thrive in a wide range of temperatures. Even refrigerated food may be susceptible to fungal invasion.
What is the function of nerve tissue?
Nerve tissue serves as the communication system of an animal. Nerve tissue allows an animal to receive stimuli from its environment and to relay an appropriate response.
Which organism is known as the humongous fungus?
The humongous fungus is an enormous, underground fungus that grows in northern Michigan. The fungus, Armillaria gallica, was discovered in 1992. It encompasses 35 acres, 15 hectares, and is thought to be at least 1,500 years old. Scientists proved that the organism was a single fungus by taking 20 samples of the fungus and performing DNA analyses on 16 fragments from each sample. The genetic material of each sample was identical.
What are the parts of a leaf?
Leaves, outgrowths of the shoot apex, are found in a variety of shapes, sizes, and arrangements. Most leaves have a blade, a petiole, stipules, and veins. The blade is the flattened portion of the leaf. The petiole is the slender stalk of the leaf.
What general characteristics do all fishes have in common?
All fishes have the following characteristics: 1. Gills that extract oxygen from water. 2. An internal skeleton with a skin that surrounds the dorsal nerve cord. 3. Single loop blood circulation in which the blood is pumped from the heart to the gills and then to the rest of the body before returning to the heart. 4. Nutritional deficiencies, particularly some amino acids that must be consumed and cannot be synthesized.
How do muscle cells respond to activities like weightlifting?
Weightlifting will cause muscles to grow. The size of muscle cells increases. But the body does not actually grow more muscle cells. Rather, weightlifting causes the body to grow more of the thick myosin, and thin, actin, proteins that aid muscle contraction. This process makes the muscle not only bigger, but stronger as well. Some muscles gain strength faster than others. In general, large muscles, like those present in your chest and back, grow faster than smaller ones, like those in your arms and shoulders. Most people can increase their strength between 7 and 40%. After 10 weeks of training each muscle group at least twice a week.
What are neurosecretory cells?
Neurosecretory cells are specialized nerve cells that produce and secrete hormones. Well-known examples of neurosecretory cells are oxytocin and vasopressin-secreting neurons in the hypothalamus and cells in the adrenal medulla. These cells are found in vertebrates and invertebrates.
Are there other medicinal uses for fungi?
Two species of fungi have been popular in China and Japan for their medicinal value: Lentinula idodes, a species of shiitake, and Ganoderma lucidum, a reishi mushroom. Lentinan and L. idodes mycelium extract, LEM, are two extracts from L. idodes that are being studied for their medicinal properties. Lentinan has been found to enhance the function of the immune system and slow tumor growth. LEM appears to improve liver function and may have potential as an antiviral agent. Asian herbalists consider reishi to be the fungus of choice for treating of a variety of illnesses.
How is DNA organized in the nucleus?
Within the nucleus, DNA is organized with proteins into a fibrous material called chromatin. As a cell prepares to divide or reproduce, the thin chromatin fibers condense, becoming thick enough to be seen as separate structures, which are called chromosomes.
What is the structure of a ribosome?
A ribosome is composed of two parts known as the large and small subunits. Each of these is a combination of protein and a type of RNA known as rRNA. At the beginning of translation, the two subunits form a structure around the mRNA molecule as the first tRNA. The one matching the first methionine or FMET arrives. The completed ribosome has niches that hold up to 3 tRNAs at a time. Because a cell has so many ribosomes at any one time, rRNA is the most common type of RNA found in cells.
What genetic diseases come from mutations of mitochondrial DNA?
Because mitochondria are primarily responsible for energy conversion. Mutations in their DNA affect the ability of the cell to generate ATP, the immediate energy source for cells. Those cells in tissues with the highest energy demands demonstrate the most severe effects of mitochondrial mutations.
What is xenotransplantation?
Xenotransplantation is the transplantation of tissue or organs from one species to another. The development of this technique has led to the breeding of animals specifically for use as human organ donors. Because humans would reject a non-human organ as foreign, transgenic animals, e.g., pigs, are genetically altered with human DNA with the hope of suppressing eventual rejection.
What period of time has come to be known as the Golden Age of microbiology?
The era known as the Golden Age of microbiology began in 1857 with the work of Louis Pasteur. 1822 to 1895, and lasted about 60 years. During this period of time, there were many important scientific discoveries. Joseph Lister's, 1827 to 1912, practice of treating surgical wounds with a phenol solution led to the advent of aseptic surgery. The advancements Paul Ehrlich, 1854 to 1915, made to the theory of immunity synthesized the magic bullet, an arsenic compound that proved effective in treating syphilis in humans. In 1884 Elie Metchnikoff, 1845 to 1916, an associate of Pasteur, published a report on phagocytosis. The report explained the defensive process in which the body's white blood cells engulf and destroy microorganisms. In 1897 Masaki Ogata reported that rat fleas transmitted bubonic plague, ending the centuries-old mystery of how plague was transmitted. The following year, Kiyoshi Shiga, 1871 to 1957, isolated the bacterium responsible for bacterial dysentery. This organism was eventually named Shigella dysenteriae. During the golden age of microbiology, researchers identified the specific microorganism responsible for numerous infectious diseases. The following chart identifies many of these diseases, their infectious agent, who discovered them, and the year they were discovered.
What are the major functions of leaves?
Leaves are the main photosynthetic organ. However, they are also important in gas exchange and water movement throughout the whole plant.
What is the tree of life?
Darwin envisioned a tree of life with branch tips representing currently living species and the base as the common ancestor of all. As one moved from the tips toward the trunk, one would pass the common ancestors for each species group. This idea is still under debate today as researchers try to determine how and how often life has evolved on Earth.
Which organelles contain DNA?
DNA is found in nuclei, mitochondria, chloroplasts, and some centrioles.
What role do bonds have in bioorganic molecules?
Bonds are important to the structure of bioorganic molecules. Because chemical reactions actually involve electron activity at the subatomic level. Shape determines function. For example, morphine has a shape similar to an endorphin, a natural molecule in the brain. Endorphins are pain suppressant molecules, thus, morphine essentially mimics the function of endorphins and can be used as a potent pain reliever.
What is DNA supercoiling?
When DNA is not being replicated or specific genes are not transcribed. Its normal form is two strands twisted around a helical axis, much like a spiral staircase turning clockwise. However, during DNA replication or transcription, enzymes alter the structure of DNA such that additional twists are added. Positive supercoiling, or subtracted, negative supercoiling. Either type of supercoiling makes DNA even more compact. A group of enzymes, the topoisomerases, are able to disentangle DNA strands. They are called topoisomerases because they control the topology of DNA.
How do animals mark their territory?
Animals use pheromones to mark their territory. A pheromone is a type of airborne chemical. This can be accomplished by leaving bits of fur and dander on a visual object or by scent marking with small amounts of urine.
How were the White Cliffs of Dover, England, formed?
The White Cliffs of Dover are composed of a variety of protist fossil shells, including coccolithophories, a type of algae, and foraminiferans. The shells of dead foraminiferans are deposited on the bottom of the ocean and go on to form gray mud. The gray mud is gradually transformed into limestone, chalk. Geologic uplifting brings the formations of limestone up to land.
What is the difference between DNA and RNA?
DNA and RNA are both nucleic acids formed from a repetition of simple building blocks called nucleotides. A nucleotide consists of a phosphate, PO4, sugar, and a nitrogen base, of which there are 5 types. Adenine, A, thymine, T, guanine, G, cytosine, C, and uracil, U. In a DNA molecule, this basic unit is repeated in a double helix structure made from 2 chains of nucleotides linked between the bases. The links are either between A and T or between G and C. The structure of the bases does not allow other kinds of links. RNA is also a nucleic acid, but it consists of a single chain. And the sugar is ribose rather than deoxyribose. The bases are the same except that the thymine, T, in DNA is replaced by another base called uracil, U, which also links to adenine, A.
What is dry rot?
Dry rot is a misleading common name for this form of decay since One of the primary requirements for fungal decay is moisture. This form of decay is referred to as dry rot because it is found in wood that is not visibly moist or damp. The fungus Serpula lacrymans produces specialized mycelia that enable it to carry water and nutrients from a location with the conditions necessary for decay to locations where these conditions are not met. Mycelia can carry water and nutrients up to 15 feet 4.5 meters, across materials such as stone and concrete. The environmental requirements for the fungus are humid air with a relative humidity greater than 95% and temperatures between 32 degrees and 82 degrees Fahrenheit, 0 degrees and 28 degrees Celsius. Serpula lacrymans is common in wooden buildings of Europe, Asia, Australia, and Japan. It is uncommon in North America, although a related fungus. Marulaporia incrassate causes similar damage that is not as extensive.
What is a fixed action pattern?
A fixed action pattern, FAP, is an innate behavior pattern that is genetic and thus independent of individual learning. It consists of a series of stereotypic behaviors that are dependent on an external signal. Sign stimulus, that causes the behavior. A well-documented FAP is the response of the male three-spined stickleback fish to aggressive stimuli. When a male stickleback is presented with a fish model displaying a red belly characteristic of males, it will display a series of standard threat and aggressive attack behaviors.
What are some specific examples of how plants are economically important?
Materials of plant origin are found in a wide variety of industries including paper, food, textile, and construction. Chocolate is made from cocoa seeds, specifically seeds of the species Theobroma cacao. Foxglove, Digitalis purpurea, contains cardiac glycosides used to treat congestive heart failure. The berries obtained from the plant Piper nigrum produce black pepper. The berries are dried, resulting in black peppercorns, which can then be cracked or ground. Tea can be made from the leaves of Camellia sinensis. Fiber taken from the stem of flax plants, Linum usitatissimum, have been used to make linen. While the flax seeds are commonly consumed and are a source of linseed oil, paper money is even made from flax fibers.
What was Alfred Russel Wallace's contribution to phrenology?
Alfred Russel Wallace became interested in a number of subjects outside of natural science, including the suffragette movement and spiritualism. He is also known for his approval of phrenology, which uses the shape of an individual's skull to make predictions about his or her mental functions. Wallace pointed out that while other scientists talked about the connection between the mind and the body, phrenologists had actually attempted to link physical structures, the skull, with mental attributes, thought processes. Although phrenology has been largely discounted as a valid scientific endeavor, in Wallace's time it was just one of a number of areas of investigation into the natural world.
What is the difference between primary growth and secondary growth?
Primary growth occurs in the tips of stems and roots in plants, thus increasing the length of the stems and roots. Secondary growth allows a plant to increase its diameter. The results of secondary growth form the division of a cylinder of cells around the plant's periphery.
What is photosynthesis?
Photosynthesis, from the Greek word photo, meaning light, and synthesis, from the Greek word syntythene, which means to put together, is the process by which plants use energy derived from light in order to make food molecules from carbon dioxide and water. Photosynthesis is a dual-staged process with multiple components. Light reactions or light-dependent reactions compose the first steps of photosynthesis. During the light reactions, light energy derived from sunlight is converted to chemical energy. Oxygen, O2, is produced as a waste product of this process. The steps of the second stage are the carbon fixation reactions known as the Calvin cycle. The Calvin cycle is a series of reactions that assemble sugar molecules from carbon dioxide, CO2, and the energy-containing products of the light reactions. Carbon fixation is the conversion of carbon dioxide, CO2, into organic compounds.
What are the four groups of seedless, vascular plants?
The seedless, vascular plants include ferns of the genus Pterophyta, which is the largest group, the whisk ferns of the genus Xylophyta, the club mosses of the genus Lycophyta, and the horsetails of the genus Arthrophyta.
What animal makes the longest migration?
The Arctic tern, Sterna paradisea, flies a round trip from the Arctic of North America and Eurasia to the Antarctic. A round trip that can total as much as 20,000 miles, 32,000 kilometers.
When was the term antibiotic first used?
The term antibiotic means against life. In 1889 Paul Wheelman used the term to describe the substance pyocyanin, which he had isolated several years earlier. Piocyanin inhibited the growth of bacteria in test tubes but was too lethal to be used in disease therapy. Antibiotics are chemical products or derivatives of certain organisms that inhibit the growth of other organisms.
What separates humans from primates?
Morphologic and molecular studies suggest that our closest living relative species is the chimpanzee. Although some of the evidence is conflicting, we do know that analysis of protein structure in both chimps and humans indicates that approximately 98% of our gene sequences are functionally identical. Meaning that if the gene sequences differ, it is not enough to radically change the proteins produced from them. It is also estimated that our last common ancestor with the chimp would have lived at least 5 million years ago.
What are rusts and smuts and what effect do they produce in crops?
Rusts and smuts are very small fungi responsible for many serious plant diseases. Cereals and other grains are highly susceptible to attack by rusts and smuts. Many rusts and smuts have complicated life cycles as they are known to use more than one plant species as a host during their lifetime. For example, wheat rust spends a portion of its life in barberry plants and a portion in wheat.
What are the major groups of organisms in the kingdom Protista?
There is little agreement among taxonomists on how to classify the protists, but they may be conveniently divided into 7 general groups that share certain characteristics of locomotion, nutrition, and reproduction.
Who extensively studied fly behavior?
Vincent Dithier, 1914 to 1993, spent most of his life researching chemical responses in insects. He wrote numerous articles and books, both for the general public and specifically for children. To Know a Fly, perhaps his most famous book, is considered one of the classic books in entomology. The book details physiological research on flies, particularly with regard to chemoreception, with a touch of humor. Aside from his career as a distinguished research scientist, he was able to popularize what scientists do and what draws people to science.
What are organelles?
Organelles, frequently called little organs, are found in all eukaryotic cells. They are specialized, membrane-bound, cellular structures that perform a specific function. Eukaryotic cells contain several kinds of organelles, including the nucleus, mitochondria, chloroplasts, endoplasmic reticulum, and Golgi apparatus.
What organism has the smallest cellular genome?
The microorganism Mycoplasma genitalium has the smallest known cellular genome, consisting of 580,070 base pairs. A base pair is a couple of hydrogen-bonded nitrogenous bases, one purine and one pyrimidine, that join the component strands of the DNA double helix. By comparison, Escherichia coli has 4,639,221 base pairs.
How does an animal's niche affect its behavior?
A niche can be defined as the natural history of a species, where it lives, what it eats, and so forth. Those constraints in turn have an effect on behavior. For example, lizard species found in deserts from different parts of the world use a very similar behavior to harvest water from the moist air in the early morning. They use the bumps or ridges on their heads as condensing spots and then orient their bodies so that the water rolls toward the snout, where it can be licked off by the tongue.
How do the excretory organs vary in different species?
Many animals, such as sponges, jellyfish, tapeworms, and other small organisms, do not have distinct excretory organs. Rather, they rid their bodies of waste through diffusion. Larger, more complex animals require specialized, often tubular, organs to rid their bodies of waste. For example, flatworms such as planarians have tubules that collect wastes and expel them to the outside via pores. Segmented worms such as earthworms have nephridia, tubules with a ciliated opening in each segment. Fluid from the body cavity is propelled through the nephridia. Wastes are expelled through a pore to the outside while certain substances are reabsorbed. Insects have a unique excretory system that consists of Malpighian tubules. Waste products enter the Malpighian tubes from the body cavity. Water and other useful substances are reabsorbed, while uric acid passes out of the body. Vertebrate animals have kidneys to dispose of metabolic wastes.
What are examples of sex-linked traits?
Sex-linked traits are most commonly found on the X chromosome and include color blindness. Both red and green types, hemophilia, types A and B, ichthyosis. A skin disorder causing large dark scales, and Duchenne muscular dystrophy. There are very few Y-linked traits. Hairy ears, a relatively rare trait, is a Y-linked trait.
What is bioterrorism?
Bioterrorism is the use of biological substances or toxins with the goal of causing harm to humans. Biotechnology can be used to manufacture biological weapons such as large amounts of anthrax spores. However, biotechnology can also be used positively to identify bioweapons. A new faster method of PCR, called continuous flow PCR, uses a biochip and requires only nanoliter amounts of DNA to detect a bioweapon.
How are macromolecules built?
There are 4 types of very large molecules that are important to life. These are carbohydrates, nucleic acids, lipids, and proteins. Although these are quite diverse in terms of structure, size, and function, the same mechanisms build and break them down, all are comprised of single units linked together to create a chain. Similar to a freight train with many cars. All the monomers or single units contain carbon. All monomers are linked together through a process known as dehydration synthesis, which literally means building by removing water. A hydrogen atom, H, is removed from one monomer, and a hydroxide, O, group is removed from the next monomer in line. Atoms on the ends of the 2 monomers will then form a covalent bond to fill their electron shells, thereby building a polymer. All polymers are broken down by the same method, hydrolysis. Hydrolysis means breaking with water. By adding H2O, which contains hydrogen and hydroxide groups, back to the monomers, the bond is broken and the macromolecule separates into smaller pieces.
Where does the carbon dioxide that we exhale come from?
The carbon dioxide we exhale is a result of the breakdown of glucose. During the energy harvesting phase of aerobic cell respiration. During this process, all of the carbon atoms, from the C6H12O6, are released as carbon dioxide molecules. Of the 6 carbon dioxide molecules generated, 4 are released via the Krebs cycle.
What is the blending theory?
Blending theory was the commonly held belief that characteristics were mixed in each generation. For example, breeding 2 horses, one with a light-colored coat, the other dark, would result in offspring that were all intermediate in coat color. If this held true, then eventually all organisms would become more alike in each generation. Although this theory persisted for many years, It was eventually supplanted by the work of Mendel and the modern geneticists.
Why is DNA important?
DNA is the chemical inside the nucleus of a cell that carries the genetic instructions for making living organisms.
Do termites have any natural predators?
Birds, ants, spiders, lizards, and dragonflies have been seen preying on young winged termites when they emerge and fly from a home colony to establish new colonies. Termites are generally most vulnerable to predators when they emerge from their home colony. Chimpanzees are also known to use sticks as tools to forage for termites.
What is a species?
There are several ways of defining a species, and scientists will use different definitions. Depending on whether they are referring to a fossil, extinct, species or a living, extant, one. For example, an extant species can be defined as all the individuals of all the populations capable of interbreeding. A group of populations that are evolutionarily distinct from all other populations may also be defined as a species. Even if they are incapable of interbreeding due to extinction.
How does ozone benefit life on Earth?
Ozone, a form of oxygen with 3 atoms instead of the normal 2, is highly toxic. Less than 1 part per million of this blue-tinged gas is poisonous to humans. In Earth's upper atmosphere, stratosphere, ozone is a major factor in making life on Earth possible. About 90% of the planet's ozone is in the ozone layer. The ozone belt shields and filters Earth from excessive ultraviolet, UV, radiation generated by the sun. Scientists predict that a diminished or depleted ozone layer could lead to increased health problems for humans, such as skin cancer, cataracts, and weakened immune systems. Increased UV can also lead to the reduced crop yield and disruption of aquatic ecosystems including the marine food chain. While beneficial in the stratosphere, near ground level ozone is a pollutant that helps form photochemical smog and acid rain.
How is DNA unzipped?
DNA is unzipped during its replication process. The 2 strands of the double helix are separated and a new complementary DNA strand is synthesized from the parent strands. Also, during DNA transcription, one DNA strand, known as the template strand, is transcribed, copied, into an mRNA strand. In order for the two strands of DNA to separate, the hydrogen bonds between the nitrogen bases must be broken. DNA helicase breaks the bonds. However, the enzyme does not actually unwind the DNA. There are special proteins that first separate the DNA strands at a specific site on the chromosome. These are called initiator proteins.
Why do cats swish their tails?
A cat's tail is a means of communication and can represent a range of moods. Every cat owner is familiar with the slow sweep of a cat's tail from side to side. A happy cat will greet you with a tail raised high, while a slight movement indicates pleasure and or anticipation. As the cat becomes more hunter-like, the flick of the tip becomes first a twitch and then a thrashing. At this point the cat is highly engaged and likely to pounce.
How are fossils dated?
There are two methods for dating fossils. The first is known as relative dating. By determining the age of the surrounding rock, scientists can give an approximate age to the fossils therein. Rocks are dated by their distance from the surface, with older rocks generally deeper from the surface. Using the data from other fossils found in the same rock stratum can also be used to give an approximate date to a new sample. The second method is known as absolute dating. Absolute dating relies on the known rates of radioactive decay within rocks. By measuring the ratio between the radioactive forms of an element like uranium-238 to its non-radioactive decayed form, scientists can determine when the rock formed, because that would be when the radioactive isotope was acquired. Amino acids also convert gradually from one form, the left-handed, to another, right-handed, after an organism dies, and so may be used as a method of dating some fossils.
Who was the first person to study populations mathematically?
Thomas Robert Malthus, 1766 to 1834, in 1798 attempted to inform people that the human population, like any other population, had the potential to increase exponentially. Malthusian ideas were not well received, as he predicted the rate of population growth would exceed the ability of the land to produce food. His work was later used by Charles Darwin to explain his theory of natural selection.
How long do animals, in particular mammals, live?
Of the mammals, humans and fin whales live the longest. Below is the maximum lifespan for various animal species.
How much newspaper must be recycled to save one tree?
(135 to 40 feet, 10.6 to 12 m). Tree produces a stack of newspapers 4 feet. 1.2 m. thick. This much newspaper must be recycled to save a tree.
How can animal behavior be categorized?
Animal behavior can be sorted into broad categories, e.g., courtship, feeding, or into more specific patterns, example attack, chase, aggressiveness.
How does one prepare a 110 dilution?
A 110 dilution means 1 part in a total of 10. There are 3 different ways to prepare a 110 dilution. 1. The weight to weight, WW method. 2. The weight to volume, WV method, and 3. The volume to volume, VV method. In the weight to weight method, 1.0 g of solute is dissolved in 9.0 g of solvent, yielding a total of 10 parts by weight, 1 of which is solute. In the weight to volume method, enough solvent is added to 1.0 g of solute to make a total volume of 10 ml. In this method, 1 part, by weight, is dispersed in 10 total parts, by volume. Since most biological solutions are very dilute, the accuracy of most research is not affected if a previously weighed solute is dissolved in the desired volume of solvent. The volume to volume method is preferred when the solute is a liquid. 1 milliliter of solute, such as ethanol, added to 9.0 ml of water yields a 10-part solution, 1 part of which is the solute.
What is the ENCODE project?
The ENCODE, Encyclopedia of DNA Elements, project refers to a long-term project sponsored by the National Human Genome Research Institute to identify and locate all genes, including protein coding and non-protein coding ones, and other functional elements within the human genome.
What is nuclear magnetic resonance?
Nuclear magnetic resonance, NMR, is a process in which the nuclei of certain atoms absorb energy from an external magnetic field. Scientists use NMR spectroscopy to identify unknown compounds, check for impurities, and study the shapes of molecules. They use the knowledge that different atoms will absorb electromagnetic energy at slightly different frequencies.
Why is Archaeopteryx important?
Archaeopteryx is the first known bird. It had true feathers that provided insulation and allowed this animal to form scoops with its wings for catching prey.
How much do plants contribute to the human diet?
In the United States and Western Europe, approximately 65% of a human being's total caloric intake and 35% of consumed protein are obtained from plants or plant products. Soybeans are an example of a plant with high protein content. In developing nations, almost 90% of calories and more than 80% of protein in a person's diet are from plants.
How do viruses enter their host cells to reproduce?
A virus is able to enter a host cell by either tricking the host cell to pull it inside, as the cell would do to a nutrient molecule, or by fusing its viral code with either the host cell wall or membrane and then releasing its genes into the host. Some viruses inject their genetic material into the host cell, leaving their empty viral coats outside of the host cell.
What is the cell cycle and how is it controlled?
The life cycle of a single eukaryotic cell is known as the cell cycle. The cycle has two major phases, interphase and mitosis. When a cell is not dividing, it is in interphase, for example. A mature neuron conducting an impulse is in interphase. Some cells remain in interphase almost indefinitely. Interphase includes the G1, S, and G2 phases, which are periods of growth during which a cell increases in size, complexity, and protein content. The G1 phase prepares for DNA synthesis, known as the S phase. And G2 prepares for both mitosis and the synthesis of proteins. Cells that undergo mitotic phases of division and renewal are cyclically predictable. An example of this would be an epithelial cell, which divides about every 15 days. The phase of mitosis, also known as M phase, may require a great deal of preparation time.
What is the law of complementary base pairing?
The law of complementary base pairing refers to the pairing of nitrogenous bases in a specific manner. Purines pair with pyrimidines. More specifically, adenine must always pair with thymine, and guanine must always pair with cytosine. The basis of this law came from the data obtained by Edwin Chargaff, 1905 to 2002, and is known as Chargaff's law or rule. The DNA strands are called antiparallel.
Did Darwin and Mendel know each other?
Although both men lived during the same time period in the 19th century, they did not know each other. Charles Darwin's, 1809–1882, publication on the origin of 387 species, 1859. Popularized his theory of natural selection but raised many questions as to how organisms could display modified or new traits. In 1865 Mendel published his landmark paper Experiments in Plant Hybridization. Researchers have been unable to document whether either man used the other's work in the development of their respective theories.